Hello and welcome back to my playthrough of Terraria in Eternity mode. The rules for this playthrough are quite simple. After every boss, I'll be spinning a picker wheel to choose which class I use against the next boss. Unfortunately, the audio recording issues from the last episode continue for the first few minutes of this video. Speaking of the last episode, it ended with a dramatic face-off against the wall of flesh, in which we both died. With this being Eternity mode, I have no shame in accepting that as a valid win. So I return to the picker wheel to see what class I'll get for the next boss. An ongoing issue with all of the spins so far is there's been a distinct lack of melee. There's been a fairly equal split between the other three classes, although not once has it landed on melee. Because of this, I was quite excited to see that I had finally got melee, so went back to the game to see what options I had for the next chapter of this playthrough. I switched to some shadow armour for the time being, and used the breaker blade dropped by the wall of flesh as a weapon. After fighting a few ice mimics, I replaced this with the frost brand, giving me the opportunity to deal damage at a range. With a decent weapon obtained, I start the long grind of early hard mode. I started with the goblin army as there were two things I wanted from this event. First is the Shadow Flame knife, which is probably one of the best melee weapons available at this stage. Secondly, I wanted to get the wretched pouch. This is an Eternity mode accessory that can be combined with many other accessories to make the Bionomic cluster, which is an incredibly powerful accessory that has many effects. Luckily, both of these items drop from the Goblin Summoner, so once the event is over I can just buy some summons from the Deviant. It takes a few kills, but I eventually get both drops, and set out to get the rest of the accessories I need for the Bionomic cluster. Almost all of these accessories are dropped by mini-bosses such as the Sand or Ice Elemental, or from events such as the Pirate Invasion. I decided I'd need some better armour to take these on, so did some fishing for hard mode ores. I thought an interesting restriction/incentive would be limiting my use of these depending on what boss I'd defeated, meaning I'd only allow myself to use cobalt or palladium until after Queen Slime was defeated. I crafted the palladium armour for enhanced regen, and then summoned the Frost Legion for the first time since playing Terraria. My only reason for this was to get the ordinary carrot, which has a 1% chance to drop from any enemy. On its own, this isn't very useful, but it's necessary if I want to make the Bionomic cluster, so I grind through the event anyway. In keeping with the winter theme, I decided I'd next go for the Ice Elemental, which was honestly harder than many of the pre-hard mode bosses. In addition to the regular lasers from vanilla, the Ice Elemental will periodically shoot out a spread of frostburn projectiles that will change direction to home in on the player. On their own, neither of these attacks are too bad, but when combined together it makes it quite difficult to dodge. After a few deaths I finally take one down, meaning I can now buy summons from the Deviant and don't have to wait for one to spawn naturally in the snow biome. After a few more kills I finally got the frigid gemstone that I was looking for, and moved on to the next mini-boss on my hit list. Fargo's adds a summon item for jungle mimics, and Eternity mode gives them brand new attacks. It actually does this for every biome mimic, but I won't show them all as I want to leave some things for you to find if you play the mod yourself. The jungle mimic specifically will shoot out vines which resemble Plantera's hooks. While these are shot out fairly quickly, they're quite easy to dodge by just going in a circle. On the first kill I get a new weapon added by Fargo's called the Vine Slinger. As this is a flail I can actually use it with my current class, so decide to test it out on a hallowed mimic, which shoot arrows from their mouth in the sky as if they were a daedalus stormbow. The Vine Slinger deals good damage, but its range is quite short, so I switch back to the Shadow Flame knife to avoid taking damage myself. After killing a couple of hallowed mimics, I get the Flying Knife, which excels at dealing damage to the multiple segments of wyverns, allowing me to craft frost wings for better mobility. I keep farming wyverns until one drops a wyvern feather, which is also needed for the Bionomic cluster. I then start a sandstorm in the desert and wait for a sand elemental to spawn. This mini-boss also gets some Eternity mode changes, spawning crossbone projectiles that fall from the sky, and shooting sharks out of each of the 3 sandstorms it spawns. If any of these sharks hit you, you'll be inflicted with a debuff which reduces your max health over time. I farm some more sand elementals until one drops the Sands of Time, which is actually quite useful on its own. This halves the time it takes to respawn, and can be used to teleport to your latest death location. The sped up respawn time works from your inventory too, so you don't even have to give up an accessory slot for it. Next is the Rainbow Slime, which spawns in the Hallowed biome when it's raining. This acts like a spiked slime on steroids, spraying out massive spreads of spikes and splitting into smaller rainbow slimes once it's defeated. It once again takes a few kills to get the drop that I wanted, this time the concentrated rainbow matter, which doesn't have too much use on its own. I put this in storage for now and continue my quest for the Bionomic cluster, this time making my way through multiple rune wizards to get the Mystic Skull. This leaves just one item left that I need to farm for, and it drops from the Flying Dutchman. The Eternity Mode pirate invasion is quite painful, so I end up using the battle cry to manipulate spawns and take down waves of enemies at a time. After taking down the Flying Dutchman and defeating the invasion, I spawn a few more until one drops the security wallet that I need. With this, I can finally craft the Bionomic cluster. This accessory grants too many effects to list them all, but to name a few, it gives a 10% chance of taking only 1 damage when hit, summons a rainbow slime minion, improves reforges, grants auto fire, and spawns shadow flame tentacles when enemies are near. It also grants immunity to many of the Eternity Mode debuffs, making it one of the best accessories in the game when playing in this mode. It certainly made farming for the Ankh Shield much easier, which felt like quite a simple recipe in comparison. With all of the early hard mode grinding out of the way, I finally spawned Queen Slime. The first phase went surprisingly well, with me only really having trouble with the Queen's ground pound attack, in which she would spray slime spikes at the player. I later found that the best way to dodge these was to stay close to the Queen Slime and fly over them before they spread too far. I really didn't last long once phase 2 started, so had to return for another attempt. Eventually I managed to get the hang of phase 2, staying close to the Queen so that I could properly dodge her attacks. The most notable of which is this attack, where the Queen will rain down columns of slime spikes that force the player to slowly move left and right to avoid them. On top of this, there are plenty of projectiles and minions to dodge, and overall this fight was really enjoyable. So I'm not going to lie, I didn't actually expect to beat Queen Slime that quickly, so time to spin for the next boss, which will be one of the mechs. I'm not sure which one exactly, really depend on which class we get. And I'm sticking with melee, okay. So no actual upgrades really to be made. That wasn't necessarily true, as going by my self-imposed rules, I could now upgrade to Orichalcum armour. However, for my weapons and accessories, this was pretty much the best I could get at this point, so I go straight into attempting the twins. They both start with their vanilla phase 2 AI, with the real difficulty starting once they reach 50% health. At the start of this phase, Retinazer will perform a circular death ray attack, while Spasmatism shoots out lines of projectiles, forcing the player to carefully circle the bosses. After this attack, Spasmatism will constantly dash at the player while firing its flamethrower, and Retinazer will shoot out accelerating star projectiles in addition to its usual lasers. Unsurprisingly, I die on the second death ray attack, leading to a chain of many deaths. In order to win this fight, I was going to need every advantage I could get my hands on. So I got to work rebuilding my arena and grinding for the Omni Station, a furniture item added by Fargo's which acts as pretty much any furniture buff you could think of, including campfires, bass statues, sunflowers and even honey. Plus, if you right click on it with a weapon, you're given the appropriate station buff, in my case sharpened for melee. Even after these improvements, it still took a few more attempts to get a successful one, making the actual victory even sweeter. That was a tense fight. That was difficult. Very, very difficult. Definitely starting to feel the pain of Eternity Mode. From Queen Slime to that was quite a big jump. If you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. I've also started a Discord server which you can join using a link in the description, where you can chat about all things Terraria and even see some sneak peeks for upcoming videos.